Instructor Sable stood in the middle of the classroom, carefully watching the students as they worked on their tasks. His classroom was filled with children from all across the galaxy, species and cultures unlike anything he had ever imagined. There were children from lush planets, with oceans and forests, children from worlds of ice and snow, children from peaceful, technologically advanced societies. Sable had taught these students for years, guiding them to understand not only knowledge but also each other's worlds. But today, something was different. Today, there was a new student in the room, and Sable couldn't shake the feeling that something strange was about to unfold. Her name was July. She was human, one of the very first humans ever to attend this school. Sable had heard of Earth, her home planet, but what he had heard didn't match the calm and peaceful atmosphere of this academy. Earth was known for one thing above all. It was a death world, a place where survival was a constant struggle, where the environment itself seemed to fight back against its inhabitants. July had arrived with the usual hopes of starting fresh, eager to meet new friends and learn about different cultures. But from the moment she stepped into the classroom, she realized that her presence alone made the other students uncomfortable. They didn't look at her the same way they looked at each other. Her human features, her strange way of speaking, and the reputation of Earth all made her an outsider in this galaxy of children from peaceful, well-established planets. Sable watched as Julie sat down at an empty table in the corner of the common area. Every day, she sat there alone, eating her lunch in silence. The other students, even though they had no reason to dislike her, seemed to avoid her. They would glance at her nervously and whisper to one another, their voices low but clearly filled with doubt. What's so strange about her? Sable wondered. She's just like any other student here, curious, eager to learn, just different in some ways. But why are they treating her like this? He knew it wasn't her fault. She had done nothing wrong. In fact, July had tried to make friends, but her efforts were always met with cold shoulders. She had approached other students, asked about their worlds, and even tried to share stories about Earth, but no one seemed interested. In the end, she simply gave up and kept to herself. Sable, however, couldn't ignore the situation. He knew that there had to be more to this than just simple discomfort. The students weren't just avoiding Julie because she was new. They were avoiding her because of where she came from. Earth, the death world. He had heard stories about Earth from other educators. The planet was surrounded by fear, legend, and mystery. Its people were known to be strong, survivors in a world filled with danger. Sable had always been curious about Earth, but the way the galaxy spoke of it made him uneasy. He had seen so many worlds, some peaceful, some deadly in their own right. But Earth was different. Earth's reputation as a death world was not about its inhabitants being vicious or cruel. It was about how they fought to survive against impossible odds. But the idea that Earthlings could thrive in such a world made no sense to the students here. To them, Earth was a place that should have been abandoned, a place too dangerous for anyone to live. Every day, Sable observed Julie, wondering what it was like to grow up in such a world. The humans, in Sable's eyes, were more than just survivors. They were something else. But what? Was there something about Earth that these students didn't understand? One afternoon, as Sable walked through the common area, he paused when he saw Julie talking to two students. Raza, a quick-witted child from a planet of endless deserts, and Lynn, a calm and thoughtful girl from a planet where peaceful meditation was their way of life. Sable had noticed these two students before, always friendly with everyone. But today they were sitting with Julie, and there was something different in the air. Julie's face was no longer the mask of loneliness he had seen before. Instead, she was smiling, laughing even. It was the first time in weeks he had seen her truly happy. Sable watched from a distance as the three of them talked and laughed together. Raza and Lynn didn't seem to mind that Julie was from Earth, the so-called death world. They didn't care about the rumors or the fear. For the first time, Julie wasn't just another stranger. They were treating her like she belonged. The other students, however, were still unsure. They whispered in the background, looking at the trio with a mix of curiosity and skepticism. Sable could tell that the students weren't fully ready to embrace Julie, despite the change that had started to happen. There were still whispers about Earth's dangerous reputation, and they lingered like a shadow over Julie's attempts to fit in. As Sable walked away from the scene, he felt a new sense of uncertainty. What was so special about Earth? Why did the other students fear it so much? And more importantly, why had Julie been treated so differently? Little did Sable know, the truth about Earth, and about humanity itself, was about to unfold in a way that no one in this academy could have ever expected. Julie's time on this peaceful academy was only just beginning, and the galaxy was about to learn what it truly meant to survive on a Deathworld. The following days didn't get any easier for Julie. Every morning, she'd walk through the school corridors with her head slightly lowered, avoiding the stares that followed her every move. The students weren't cruel. They didn't say anything directly to her, but the looks, the whispers, and the empty spaces around her told her everything she needed to know. July had tried again. After days of eating alone, she decided to sit closer to the other students, to engage in the conversations they were having about their home planets, their cultures, and their lives. She thought maybe, just maybe, if they got to know her, they'd see that she was just like them. But every time she tried, something always went wrong. It happened again during lunch one day. Julie had gathered enough courage to sit at a table near some other students, a group of children from planets with beautiful oceans and vast skies. She smiled, trying to be friendly, and asked them about their world. But the moment they heard the word Earth, their faces changed. Their smiles faded, and they shifted uncomfortably in their seats. It was as if the mention of her planet triggered something in them, something deep and unsettling. "Earth is dangerous," one of them finally said, his voice low, almost fearful. The others nodded in agreement, their eyes darting nervously around as if expecting something to happen. Julie was stunned. "What do you mean?" "It's just a planet, like any other." But they wouldn't hear it. The more she tried to explain, the more they pulled away. "It's not like other worlds," the girl sitting across from her said. "It's full of deadly creatures, violent storms, unstable environments. People from Earth, they're different. They have to fight to survive." Julie's heart sank. She had heard the rumors, of course. She knew that Earth wasn't seen the same way as other planets. But hearing it like this, straight from the mouths of children, hurt more than she expected. She didn't understand why they were so afraid of her home. She left the table, her stomach twisted in frustration. Why couldn't they understand that Earth was just like any other world? Sure, it had its dangers, but it also had its beauty. It had love, friendship, and hope. It wasn't perfect, but neither was any other world. Later that day, as she wandered the school grounds, lost in thought, Julie found herself near the training grounds. She had always been curious about the different classes that took place there: combat training, survival techniques, and tactics that all the students from different worlds practiced. But today, there was something different. She noticed a group of students standing around, watching something intently. They were whispering among themselves, pointing toward the center of the field. Julie, ever curious, walked closer to see what they were looking at. At the center, there was a display, a holographic simulation of a deadly creature from one of the students' planets. It was huge, with sharp claws and glowing red eyes. It looked terrifying. But what caught Julie's attention was the conversation happening around her. "This creature can kill a person in seconds. It's one of the most dangerous creatures in the galaxy," a student from the desert planet Raza had told a group of kids. Julie couldn't help herself. She approached, despite her unease. "Isn't that dangerous?" she asked quietly. Raza turned to her with a small smirk. "Of course it is. This thing could tear apart anything in its path. You should be thankful you're not from a death world, like Earth." Julie's heart skipped a beat. Another reference to her planet, and another cold reminder of how she was viewed. She looked at the simulation again, and for the first time, she found herself comparing it to her own planet. Sure, Earth had dangerous creatures, the ones that stalked the forests, the oceans, and the skies. But Earthlings didn't just survive. They adapted, they learned, they fought back, and they won. Julie wasn't just from a death world. She was from a world of survivors. Her people had mastered the art of overcoming impossible odds, adapting to whatever challenge nature or life threw their way. She knew the dangers of her world intimately, but she also knew that her species was capable of greatness. As Julie turned to leave, she overheard one of the students speaking softly to another. "I've heard Earthlings are tough, but no one really knows why. Maybe they're all just born warriors." The comment hung in the air, and Julie couldn't shake it off. Warriors, that's what they thought of her people. Not just survivors, but warriors. It was as if Earthlings weren't like the other species in the galaxy. They didn't just face danger, they thrived in it. The question lingered in her mind. Why is Earth feared so much? The answer, Julie realized, might not be as simple as she thought. Maybe her classmates were right in one way. Earth wasn't like other worlds. It wasn't just another planet in the galaxy. It was a place where only the strong survived, where every creature, every person, was forced to fight for their life. And maybe, just maybe, that was the reason her classmates were so wary of her. Julie didn't know the truth about Earth's reputation, but she was starting to suspect that the galaxy had underestimated her people. Her classmates weren't afraid of her. They were afraid of what humanity might become. And for the first time, Julie wondered, was Earth really the only death world in the galaxy? Or was it a title that no other world could claim? Julie spent the next few days in deep thought, replaying the conversation about Earth and the death world label over and over in her mind. She couldn't understand why her world was seen as so dangerous. She knew the harsh conditions of Earth well, its storms, its wild creatures, and its unpredictable environments. But she also knew the strength of her people, how they had survived through the worst of it and thrived. As the days passed, Julie grew more determined to learn the truth about why Earth was so feared across the galaxy. The constant whispers and fearful looks from her classmates made her feel like an outsider. She was determined to prove them wrong, to show them that Earth wasn't a place to be afraid of. It was a place to admire. One afternoon, while wandering the school grounds, she came across a group of students huddled together, talking in hushed tones. The group was made up of students from various worlds, planets that had long histories of war, survival, and conquest. They seemed different, more serious than the others, as if they carried a weight of knowledge that no one else did. Curiosity piqued, Julie approached them. "What are you talking about?" she asked, trying to sound casual. The group looked up at her, their faces filled with suspicion. "You shouldn't be listening," one of them muttered. It was a student from one of the galaxy's more militarized planets, Zane, who spoke. Julie frowned, her curiosity only growing. "I'm just trying to understand more about Earth, and why it's so feared." Zane's expression changed. It wasn't an angry or hostile look. It was something else, something almost pitying. He motioned for her to sit down with them, his eyes scanning the area to make sure no one else could hear. "We've been talking about your planet, Earth," he said softly, "and I think you need to know the truth." Julie's heart skipped a beat. This was the moment she had been waiting for, the moment when she could finally understand the strange and fearful reputation of her home planet. "You see," Zane continued, his voice low, "Earth's reputation isn't just about its dangerous animals or harsh climates. It's about the humans themselves. Your species doesn't just survive. You evolve." He paused, as if gathering his thoughts. Humans adapt to whatever is thrown at them, and not just in a physical sense. You adapt mentally, emotionally, and militarily. Julie was confused. "But that's a good thing, right? We survive because we change, because we fight, because we keep going." Zane shook his head, looking uncomfortable. "That's exactly why other species are afraid of Earth. Humans, you've been through so much, and yet you come out stronger every time. You don't know when to stop, and that's what makes you dangerous." Julie's mind raced. "But we don't want to hurt anyone. We just want to live in peace." Zane sighed deeply. "It's not about what you want. It's about what you could do. The galaxy has never seen a species like yours. You don't just fight to defend yourselves. You fight to conquer, to take control. And because of that, the other civilizations fear you." Julie's breath caught in her throat. She had always seen Earth as a place of struggle, but also a place of hope. A place where people helped each other, where communities survived together. The idea that her people could be feared because of their strength, because of their ability to adapt, to fight, and to grow stronger, was something she hadn't considered. "You're not the only one who has heard the stories," Zane continued, his eyes darkening. "There are rumors among the galaxy's leaders, among the warriors and military commanders. They talk about Earth like it's a threat that could explode at any moment, and they don't want to be around when it does." July felt a chill run down her spine. She had never thought about Earth in this way before. She had always felt a deep pride in her planet, but now she was beginning to understand that others might not see it the same way. They didn't see the kindness, the compassion, the way humanity worked together to overcome challenges. All they saw was a world of endless war and survival, where the people had the strength to destroy anything that stood in their way. The group of students fell silent for a moment, letting Julie process the information. Her mind was reeling. Was Earth really feared because of its people's ability to survive anything? Could that be the reason why they called it a death world? Julie sat there, staring at the ground, lost in thought. She realized that the galaxy didn't just see Earth as dangerous because of its conditions or its creatures. It saw Earth as a ticking time bomb, a place where people were constantly evolving, constantly adapting, constantly becoming something more powerful than anyone could predict. And the more she thought about it, the more she began to understand why the other students were afraid of her. They weren't just afraid of her planet. They were afraid of what humanity could become. They were afraid that one day, Earth might decide it was ready to take on the rest of the galaxy. Julie suddenly stood up, her heart racing. She needed to find out more, to dig deeper into the history of her planet and its relationship with the rest of the galaxy. She couldn't let the other students believe that Earth was just a place of danger, of chaos. She had to show them the truth. Earth was more than just a death world. It was a world of potential, a world of warriors, a world that would not stop until it had reached its full strength. And Julie was determined to prove it. The next day, Julie couldn't shake the words Zane had said. As she walked through the school corridors, she felt a sense of weight in the air, as if something was about to change. Every glance from her classmates seemed to carry more meaning. The whispers, the glances, the avoidance. It was as though she was surrounded by an invisible barrier, one that she couldn't quite break through. But that didn't stop her. She had to understand more about why Earth was so feared. She couldn't let the image of her homeworld remain as a place of terror and destruction. Earth was far more than that. Julie decided to speak to Instructor Sable. He had been kind to her since her arrival, and she felt he might be the one person who could shed more light on the situation. After class, she approached him with a nervous but determined look on her face. "Instructor Sable, may I speak with you?" she asked. He smiled warmly, his calm demeanor always putting her at ease. "Of course, July. What's on your mind?" July hesitated for a moment, but then her curiosity pushed her forward. "I've been learning a lot about Earth, and, well, I've heard some things from other students. Some people say that Earth is a death world, that we're dangerous because of how we fight and survive. But is that true?" Instructor Sable's face shifted slightly, and for the first time, Julie saw a flicker of something else in his eyes, something like concern. "You've heard those rumors, have you?" he asked softly. Julie nodded. "I don't understand. Yes, Earth is harsh. We've had to survive against a lot of challenges, But I don't see why that makes us so terrifying. Why are we feared? Sable looked thoughtful for a moment before answering. Julie, you are from Earth, so you may not realize just how unique your world is in the grand scheme of the galaxy. You see, every world is different. Some are peaceful, some are war-torn, some are vast, some are desolate. But Earth is special because of its people. The way humans have always adapted and evolved, how they've thrived in conditions that would wipe out most other species, makes you unpredictable. Julie frowned. Unpredictable. Yes, Sable said. The rest of the galaxy sees Earth's strength, but they also see the potential danger it poses. You've survived everything your world has thrown at you. Hurricanes, wild beasts, wars, famine, even natural disasters. You've done this for thousands of years, and each time, you've come back stronger. Julie's mind raced as she processed the words. She had always seen the struggles of Earth as part of her world's history, a story of survival and resilience. But now she realized it wasn't just about surviving. It was about changing, always adapting, always learning how to fight, always finding new ways to overcome. And what makes it worse, Sable continued, is that humans have an incredible drive. You don't just survive, you conquer. Your history is filled with stories of humans rising up, even when faced with extinction. It makes the rest of the galaxy uneasy. Julie felt a shiver run down her spine. The more she heard, the more she understood. Earth wasn't feared because of its wild conditions, but because of its people. The potential of humanity was something that the rest of the galaxy couldn't fully comprehend. But we don't want to fight, Julie said, feeling a lump form in her throat. We just want to live peacefully, to coexist with others. Why can't they see that? Sable smiled sadly. You're right, Julie. Most humans would prefer peace, but the fear isn't about your intentions. It's about the fear of what could happen if Earth decides to conquer, if the human will to survive and adapt turns into a desire for control. It's a potential that other civilizations can't ignore. Julie's head spun. Her heart ached for her home planet. Earth was so much more than a world of war and destruction. It was a place where people fought not just to survive, but to help each other, where communities came together in times of crisis. And yet, the rest of the galaxy only saw the danger. Sable leaned forward slightly, his voice growing softer. Julie, there is something you must understand. Humanity is capable of great things, but there is also a great responsibility in that power. Your planet may never reach the potential the galaxy fears, but it is in your hands, Julie. It is in your generation's hands to decide what path Earth will take. The weight of Sable's words settled heavily in Julie's chest. The truth was out there, buried beneath the stigma and fear. Earth wasn't just a place to survive. It was a place where humans had the potential to rise to unimaginable heights. But would they choose to use that power wisely, or would they fall into the cycle of conquest that the galaxy feared so much? Julie didn't know what the future held, but one thing was certain. She had to do everything she could to change the way Earth was seen. She had to show the galaxy that her world was more than just a death world. It was a world of hope, of strength, and of potential. And no matter what it took, she would find a way to prove that. As the days passed, Julie's determination grew. She knew her journey had only just begun. The galaxy might fear Earth, but it was her mission to make sure the fear was replaced with respect. She had a lot of work to do, but she was ready. Julie would show them all that Earth was more than just a world of destruction. It was a world of life, a world of endless possibilities. And it was time for the galaxy to see it. Julie walked through the corridors of the school with a heavy heart. Instructor Sable's words echoed in her mind, but they weren't just words. They were a warning. Earth's reputation was so deeply ingrained in the galaxy's consciousness that it felt like an unshakable truth. No matter how much she wanted to prove them wrong, there were still so many who viewed Earth as nothing more than a death world. She glanced around at her fellow students. They were all from different worlds, each with their own unique qualities and abilities, but none of them seemed as burdened as she felt. For them, Earth was a mystery, a place to be feared, and no matter how much Julie tried to fit in, no matter how much she wanted to belong, the stigma of Earth was a wall she couldn't break through. Her mind raced with thoughts of what Sybil had told her, that Earth's power was both a gift and a curse. Could she change the perception of her world? Could she prove to the galaxy that Earth wasn't just a place of destruction, but a world capable of peace and progress? But how could she? How could one human girl, the first of her kind to step foot in this academy, change the minds of so many species who had feared Earth for centuries? Julie stopped by the common area, staring out at the large windows that overlooked the sprawling campus. The stars twinkled beyond, a reminder of how vast the galaxy was, and how small Earth seemed in comparison. She had to do something, but what? Suddenly, a voice interrupted her thoughts. "You seem troubled, Earthling." Julie turned to see Zane, the large alien from the planet Cygnus, standing behind her. He had been one of the few students who hadn't avoided her, but even he had his doubts about her. His species was known for its incredible strength, and their culture was built on honor and survival. He didn't seem like the type to engage in idle chit-chat. "What do you want, Zane?" Julie asked, her tone sharper than she intended. He raised an eyebrow, unfazed. "I don't know, Earthling. I see you walking around looking like you've got the weight of the universe on your shoulders. It's not healthy to carry that alone." Julie frowned. "What do you care? You're one of them. You think I'm just another dangerous human, don't you?" Zane shrugged. "I didn't say that. But yeah, I've heard the rumors. They're hard to ignore, you know. You can't just pretend it's not there." Julie clenched her fists, frustration building. "I'm not pretending. I don't know how to fix this. How do I show all of you that Earth isn't what you think it is?" Zane stared at her for a long moment before speaking. "Maybe you don't have to show us. Maybe you just need to show the galaxy. The rumors, the fear, they won't disappear because of a few friendly gestures. You want to change things. You'll have to prove it with action, not words." Julie was silent for a moment, her mind racing. Zane was right. Words wouldn't change anything. The galaxy needed proof, not promises. She had to find a way to demonstrate that Earth wasn't just a death world, but a place where life thrived, where people fought for each other, and where they could rise above the struggles they faced. "Prove it," Julie repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. Zane nodded. "Yeah, you've got a lot of work ahead of you, Earthling. But if you're serious about changing things, then you need to start showing everyone what Earthlings are really made of. You've got your reputation, but it's not all set in stone. You can still change it." Julie felt a spark of hope ignite in her chest. Zane's words weren't just advice. They were a challenge that she wasn't going to back down from. She had to find a way to show the galaxy that Earth was more than just a world of war and destruction. She had to prove that Earthlings were capable of much more than just survival. They were capable of thriving, of learning, and of changing. "I will prove it," Julie said, her voice steady with newfound determination. "I don't know how yet, but I will." Zane smiled, a rare sight. "I'll be watching, Earthling. Don't disappoint me." As Zane walked away, Julie felt the weight of the challenge before her. The path to proving Earth's worth wouldn't be easy. But if she could change even one person's perception, then maybe, just maybe, she could change the way the galaxy viewed her homeworld. The journey ahead would be long, and the obstacles would be many. But Julie was ready to face them. She wouldn't stop until Earth's true potential was revealed to the galaxy. Julie stood at the edge of the training arena, watching the other students prepare for the day's challenges. The large, open space was filled with students from various worlds, each practicing different forms of combat, strategy, and survival. Today wasn't about learning, though. Today was about proving something. Something that Julie was ready for. She wasn't sure exactly what, but after Zane's challenge, she had to start somewhere. She had spent weeks trying to learn everything she could about the galactic community, the diverse species, their customs, their strengths and weaknesses, all of it. But one thing was clear: they didn't understand Earth. They didn't understand what humans were capable of. The rumors of Earth being the Deathworld weren't just about the planet itself. They were about the humans who had survived it. It was the human spirit, the will to fight, that set Earthlings apart. And Julie had to show that. Instructor Sable had given her a task that she wasn't sure she was ready for, but she had no choice. The challenge, a survival test. A test where each student would be thrown into an unfamiliar environment and forced to survive for 24 hours. It wasn't just about strength or skills. It was about how you adapted to the unknown. The setting was a simulated environment, a barren, desolate world with harsh weather, treacherous terrain, and scarce resources. Each student had only the basic survival gear to rely on. The environment was designed to push their limits, to see how they responded to adversity. And Julie, the first Earthling in the academy, had to prove that she could handle it. As the countdown clock began, Julie adjusted her gear and took a deep breath. Her heart raced. She wasn't nervous, though. She was determined. She had spent her entire life facing impossible odds. Surviving Earth had taught her things that no other species could understand. It wasn't about brute force or fancy gadgets. It was about ingenuity, resilience, and the drive to keep going when everything seemed impossible. The door to the arena opened, and Julie stepped into the harsh, simulated world. The temperature dropped immediately, and a gust of wind howled through the barren landscape. The sky was a sickly shade of green, and the ground beneath her feet was cracked and dry. It was a hostile world, one that wanted to break her. She glanced around and saw the other students already starting to make their way across the landscape. Some were quick to take shelter, others were scavenging for supplies. But July didn't rush. She knew that panic wouldn't help her survive. Instead, she took a moment to analyze her surroundings. The key to survival wasn't reacting blindly. It was thinking and planning. Julie began to walk, scanning the area for any signs of life. The wind whipped against her face, but she didn't flinch. Her breath formed small clouds in the cold air as she moved forward, her eyes sharp. She spotted a small cave in the distance. It wasn't much, but it would provide some shelter from the elements. She made her way towards it, her pace steady. As she approached the cave, she noticed a few other students already there. They looked at her with curious eyes, but July didn't pay them much attention. She didn't need their approval. She needed survival. She needed to prove to herself that she could do this. When she reached the cave, one of the students, a tall alien from a distant jungle world, stepped forward. "This cave is mine," he said, his voice low and challenging. July didn't flinch. "I'm not here to take anything from you. I just need shelter for the night." The alien's eyes narrowed, sizing her up. He clearly didn't believe that an Earthling could survive on this planet, let alone share a space with him. But July didn't care. She didn't need his approval. She just needed to survive. The alien hesitated for a moment before stepping aside. "Don't get in my way," he warned. July nodded and moved into the cave. She set down her pack and began to work quickly. First, she built a small fire using the supplies she had gathered, careful not to attract attention from any other predators that might be lurking in the darkness. Then, she found a few nearby rocks and began to create a small barrier around her fire to protect it from the wind. As she worked, her mind raced with thoughts of the challenge ahead. She couldn't afford to waste time. Her goal wasn't just to survive the night. It was to prove to the other students that Earthlings weren't weak, that they could handle whatever the galaxy threw at them. She was ready, and nothing was going to stop her from showing them the truth. As the hours passed, Julie remained alert, listening to the sounds of the night. Every now and then, she'd hear the faint rustle of something moving in the distance, but she didn't panic. She stayed focused, determined to make it through. Her survival instincts, honed on Earth's harsh environments, were now her greatest strength. She knew how to stay calm, how to use her environment to her advantage. The next morning, Julie woke to a bright, cold sunrise. The harsh winds had died down, and the temperature was still low, but she had made it through the night. She gathered her things, prepared to move forward and continue the test. As she stepped out of the cave, she saw the other students already up and moving. Some were still struggling to get their fires started. Others were scavenging for food. But Julie wasn't worried about what they were doing. She had proven her point. She had survived. But that was just the beginning. There was more to come. The test was far from over, and Julie knew that she had to keep pushing. She wasn't just fighting for survival. She was fighting for Earth's reputation, for the chance to show the galaxy what humans were capable of. As she moved forward into the unknown, Julie couldn't help but smile. This was just the start of her journey, and no matter how tough things got, she wouldn't stop until she had proven Earth's worth. She would show them all that Earthlings were not just survivors. They were warriors. Julie's feet moved steadily across the barren, hostile terrain, her eyes scanning the landscape for any sign of danger. The challenge was nearly over, but she could sense that something wasn't right. The world around her felt off. The air was still, too still. There were no sounds of creatures, no rustling of leaves or distant howls. It was as though the planet itself was holding its breath. She had survived the night, had navigated the brutal elements, and made it this far, but now her instincts were tingling. Something was coming, and it wasn't just the end of the survival test. There was a deeper mystery here, something far greater than the challenge itself. As she moved forward, Julie noticed something strange in the distance, an anomaly in the landscape, a dark shadow, unnatural and out of place. Her heart skipped a beat. She had learned to trust her instincts, and they were screaming at her now. Julie crept closer, careful not to make a sound. The shadow wasn't just a shadow. It was a structure, something built, and not by any natural forces. The shape was angular, metallic, almost like a massive ship buried partially in the earth, its surface gleaming ominously under the pale green sky. It didn't belong here. It was a stark contrast to the desolate world around it. She wasn't sure what to make of it, but her curiosity drove her closer. The other students were still scattered across the landscape, each trying to complete their tasks, unaware of the strange discovery. Julie didn't care about the others at that moment. This was something much bigger. Her hand hovered over the weapon at her side, just in case. She didn't know what she was about to face, but she was ready. The closer she got, the more she realized just how large the structure was. It was like nothing she had ever seen before. The ship was long and dark, its metal hull cracked and scarred, evidence of a long-forgotten battle or crash landing. Its edges were jagged, with strange markings etched into the surface, symbols that were unfamiliar to her. She reached out, her fingers brushing against the cold surface of the ship. As soon as she made contact, the ground beneath her feet trembled. A low, mechanical hum filled the air, and the ship's hull began to shift, slowly at first, then faster. Julie stepped back in shock, but before she could react, the ship's doors opened with a loud, grinding sound. Out of the shadows of the ship, a figure emerged. It was humanoid, but unlike anything Julie had seen before. The creature was tall and thin, its skin a dark metallic silver that gleamed in the dim light. Its eyes were large, glowing an eerie shade of violet. It didn't speak, but Julie could feel its presence, cold, calculating, and dangerous. Julie's hand tightened around her weapon, but she didn't draw it. This creature wasn't like the others she had faced. This wasn't just a test. This was something real. Her mind raced with questions. Who, or what, was this being? And why was it here, on a planet that was supposed to be inhospitable to all life? The creature studied her for a moment, its eyes scanning her up and down. Julie stood her ground, refusing to show fear. The creature's gaze lingered for a few more seconds before it spoke, its voice low and mechanical. "You are the first to survive," it said, its words coming in a language July couldn't quite understand. But somehow, she could still grasp the meaning. Julie frowned, confused. "First to survive? What are you talking about?" The creature didn't respond immediately. Instead, it turned its gaze to the horizon, where the sky seemed to darken. A new, ominous force was approaching. July followed its gaze, her heart racing. She could see it now, a fleet of ships, massive and dark, emerging from the sky like a swarm of locusts. "It is time," the creature said, its voice carrying an eerie sense of finality. "You were chosen for this. Earth was never meant to be just a death world. It is a test for all the worlds." Julie's mind spun with confusion. A test for all the worlds? What did that even mean? She glanced back at the approaching fleet, her blood running cold. Whatever this was, it was bigger than she had ever imagined. The survival test was only the beginning. The real battle was about to begin. And it wasn't just for survival, it was for the future of the galaxy itself. July knew one thing for certain. She wasn't going to let Earth, or her people, fall. She had come too far to turn back now. With a final glance at the creature, Julie turned and sprinted towards the others. They needed to know. They needed to prepare. The true test wasn't the survival challenge they had all faced. It was what came next. And this time, Julie was going to be ready.